Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us this beautiful Monday. This is a webinar. We're going to discuss today how call tracking can improve your e-commerce efforts. I'm Jules Tompkins with CallRail. I'm here with Ryan Garrow from Logical Position. And to get us started, Ryan, why don't you tell us briefly a little bit about yourself and Logical Position?
Thanks, Jules. So I joined Logical Position about 2.5 years ago with an acquisition of TQE Marketing that I was the CEO of. And our team came over and brought a lot of the enterprise strategy and e-commerce strategy into Logical Position. So Logical Position is one of Google's top partners. We're Bing's Global Partner of the Year. We've got about 4,500 clients and about 1,500 to 1,600 e-commerce clients at this exact time. So we just enjoy digital marketing. We do a lot of it, and I'm excited to help people understand more about it and how CallRail and e-commerce and advertising can work.
Cool. And if you're not yet familiar, CallRail is a call tracking and analytics platform. Today we're going to talk about what it looks like to pair a platform like CallRail with your e-commerce initiatives and what that could unlock for your business. First off, to get started, we're going to move to the slides here. If we can figure it out. One second, guys, bear with us. First up, we're going to talk through some trends that we're seeing right now in e-commerce. And Ryan's going to talk through those as Logical Position deals with a great number of businesses that are using e-commerce as a revenue stream. As we all know, online sales are making gains projected to account for 70% of all retail sales within the next 5 years. We're familiar with this growth rate. And we see here that 80% of online shoppers made a purchase within the last 30 days. This shows that e-commerce is still a very rapidly growing channel. Ryan, you've talked to me before about something called the Amazon effect. What do you mean when you're talking about that, and what does that mean for businesses that are tuning in today?
Well, if you're currently selling things online and you know who Amazon is and it's having an impact on your business, whether or not you see it happening within the traffic you're seeing on a daily basis, or whether you're selling on Amazon or not, it does have an impact. During the holiday season, over 50% of e-commerce sales happened on Amazon during the holiday period. If you have Amazon Prime, you understand that it's so easy to be on your phone all the time, clicking on something and buy now. It can be dangerous if you have a family like mine that just buys constantly, multiple phones, always buying things.
Sure.
So not only are people spending their time on Amazon's app and buying things, but they also have a massive digital budget. And so if they're not the biggest digital budget on Google, they're in the top 3 for sure. And so you're going to see them bidding against you on terms. Even if you don't sell there, some of your competitors may sell there. If your brand sells there, they're trying to control some of that. So their digital budget may be increasing your click cost, and they're advertising and shopping and on text ads on Google and Bing. And an interesting thing I'm seeing are some brands that we've talked with have strategically stepped away from advertising on Google and allowed Amazon to control some of that brand search volume. So there's a few big shoe brands here in Portland where we are based, and one of them decided to say, you know, rather than competing with Amazon for clicks, we're actually going to allow those people looking for a brand to buy on Amazon. And what happened after the fact, they realized that Amazon's brand pages, which are unique and kind of cool, don't have nearly the impact or conversion rates that some of the brand searches had on their own website. And so they lost some of those consumers. And also, if you all have bought anything on Amazon, Amazon protects your data very well. They're phenomenal at protecting that. But as a brand, you don't own that customer. Amazon does. So you have to think of Amazon as a retailer of yours. Amazon doesn't care if they buy your product again. They care that they buy on Amazon again. And so when a consumer converts on your website, you get that consumer data, you own the customer, you can now email them and bring them back into the brand. I think we'll touch on a little bit of that value later on, but even if you're not selling on Amazon, just understand that it is impacting your business and your bottom line and your future business as well.
Sure. And then the next trend, which is, as you mentioned, somewhat related, talk to us about this lifetime value effect. What's happening in the way of e-commerce brands beginning to gain a clearer and clearer understanding of customer lifetime value?
So what we're seeing, whether you're a retailer or a brand that sells on your own site and through retailers, conceptually understanding the lifetime value of a customer is extremely important. And the brands that are able to adopt this way of thinking quicker are finding huge advantages over competitors that aren't thinking this way yet. Once you figure out how many times a customer comes back and buys from your brand, you're able to start looking at that customer differently. And you'll have a lot of competitors that maybe are only looking at order one and trying to make profit and money off of the first order and not even worrying about the future orders. Some of them, maybe they don't have a way of getting that customer back into their brand or buying from them again. So they're constantly acquiring new customers through marketing. If you don't have repeat purchasers or you don't have a way to do that, you need to really be thinking about how you're going to get your customers to come back to your brand, whether that's introducing new product lines, whether that's finding some partnerships to bring new products to your site that they can buy from. It is important, and it has to be top of mind if it isn't already, because those companies that can look at lifetime value can spend more on their marketing to acquire a customer. So if your first order is $100, but you know that they're going to buy 2 more times over the next 6 months once they buy that first order, that gives you $300 of revenue to start looking at and start basing a marketing budget off of. And it can be huge difference. We're seeing customers acquiring vast amounts of market share from competitors because they're able to start looking at that future revenue and investing in it now. Your first order may not be profitable looking at data this way, and it has to be okay, but that future revenue, phenomenal. It does take sometimes some extra cash flow to make it work, but even taking that future revenue into impact and maybe not making any money but breaking even on the first order. And so being able to move that target return on ad spend down to a 0 break-even number can be huge as far as acquiring market share. And I talk to a lot of our customers about conceptually looking at your marketing on that economic supply-demand curve and trying to figure out where that next order is going to be that's going to take you down to that 0 profit margin first order, just even sliding there where you're basically just churning your marketing dollars to buy new customers to your brand and building up largely just you're using Google to build up airline miles. We have a lot of clients that have lots of airline miles because of that. But that additional profit, giving that up short term, can allow you to just do some amazing, really cool creative things. So start thinking about that now if you haven't.
Very interesting. So it sounds like the landscape is just becoming one where if you're in the e-commerce space, your competitors are becoming rapidly more informed. They're rapidly grabbing more data, and they're able to make smarter marketing decisions because of that. Is that accurate?
Oh, for sure. It's becoming we already know it's a data-driven marketplace online, but it used to be, he with the most money can win sometimes, but it's really he or she with the most data has the opportunity to win if they utilize it correctly.
So that's a perfect segue into what we want to talk about next, and that's optimizing for sales. That's okay. You've probably experienced, if you're viewing this webinar, that you've got more data available than you ever have before. How do you leverage that? How do you make use of it? And Ryan's got some thoughts for us here. Here are some ways that you can leverage that acquisition data and increase that revenue.
Okay, specifically, we're going to talk a little bit about AdWords and how that data can help you as a brand spend more efficiently within Google. It's not the only place to spend marketing dollars, but many times it's one of the biggest places you can spend money and one that you can get a very clear return on ad spend and clear return on your investment. And so we're talking to a lot of our clients about on a regular basis is being able to get granular data. So there is all this data in analytics and AdWords. And if you have somebody that can help you sift through data that's valuable, we've seen a huge increase in performance when a brand that we're working with goes from having some very general campaigns and general ad groups down into very granular ad groups and very granular campaigns. Campaigns where you control your budget, so you can set budget thresholds for different pieces of your account or product lines or service lines. And so being able to get down into that data and see these keywords and these search queries are really driving a high value. We want to spend more money on those and less money on the ones that aren't driving as much value. You can, it just gives you more levers, I think. And so we're translating in our company all that data online into additional levers for our clients to push and pull. So we can get very specific return on ad spends, very specific budget goals, and translate a lot of that into overall corporate goals. So that's always a difficult conversation at many companies, is taking all this marketing data and then making that a company goal. And so with all the granular data numbers and levers we have, that's allowed to happen. One of the basic ones that I tell everybody to at least start with, everybody should have a brand campaign and a non-brand campaign in their AdWords account. And some companies hate having a brand campaign. Say, oh, I'm number one organically. Those are quote unquote free. So why would I ever spend money to capture that? And so our argument would be the same one we took to Jerry Jones. You may have heard of that guy. He's a very wealthy man that has a very big NFL team. He hated thought of paying for his own team name because he's the Dallas Cowboys. So why would he ever pay for that? He's a big deal and his team's great. Okay, well, we actually did studies to show that 8% of his traffic, so one of the biggest, if not the biggest sports name of all time, 8% of his revenue did not follow him when he turned paid search off on his brand terms. And so he's a billionaire for a reason, so he obviously let us say we should probably be bidding on brand terms. Sure. Nobody wants to give up 8% of revenue. But also, in addition to that, the conversion rate on paid search ads are typically higher because we can drive them to more specific pages. And even if there's nobody else bidding on your terms, it's a deterrent to other people, and it's going to come very cheap. And so you only spend $20, $30 on your brand terms, but you're giving them a better experience. You're controlling more real estate on Google, which is really the name of advertising on Google. It's just that real estate play. So brand, non-brand, and you're going to set different goals. Your brand terms, there's not really a goal you're going to set. You know you're going to be profitable, or at least you hope you are. And then your non-brand, that's really where you're playing into that lifetime value number. Like, how much am I willing to spend to buy a customer looking for my widget or my service, and they don't know who I am yet because they should have put my brand into that search. And we've done a lot of studies with our 1,600 e-com clients and know that most of those customers that come to you on a non-brand search, it's actually nearly 100% are new to your brand. So they haven't bought from you before. And that allows you to do a lot of cool things in nurturing them, bringing them back into the brand. And so those goals are the ones you play with really in your advertising space online. And so within those spaces, make sure you're tracking all of this stuff, because getting that transaction value in e-commerce is hugely important, and making sure that if you need profit, you've got it. If you're willing to break even, you've got it. And then even to another level, it's easy conceptually to break brand, non-brand out in search and text ads. It's just keywords and using negative keywords. But if you have this, or have an agency or an internal person that's done this for you, I challenge you to dive into that and make sure that your brand terms are separate from your non-brand terms. So look at your search query report and see, because more often than not, I actually see what I call dirty data, where somebody thinks their brand is stuck in their brand campaigns and their return is great. I actually see it creeping into your non-brand campaigns often enough that it's something to look at regularly. And it actually makes your non-brand terms look better than they should. And so an example, maybe I had a client, a prospect I looked at last week, that's now a client, that had that problem. They thought they were getting a 5x return on their ad spend on Google in their non-brand campaigns. They were very excited about it and told me we're doing amazing. And I looked at it and said, well, you actually have brand searches in there making it look a lot better. And my estimates were you're probably getting closer to a 2x on that non-brand searches. And that was eye-opening for them. And so while search is conceptually easier, you can actually do the same thing on shopping. It's much, much more complicated. And I actually have yet to see another agency do it out of the thousands of accounts I look at a year. But shopping, having a brand, non-brand separation, allows you to really try to capture that elusive Google monopoly where you control all of the search results and shopping results for a brand campaign, and when appropriate for a non-brand campaign. But it takes a lot of settings within the account to get it executed properly. And so if that's something you've thought about doing, make sure we'll have my contact in here for you later. But being able to have that data of brand, non-brand on shopping and have different goals around Google Shopping, huge advantage when that can be figured out.
Okay, so we've got an uphill slope in Amazon providing challenges to businesses who depend on e-commerce as a meaningful revenue stream. We've got the competition becoming more and more data-driven, more and more informed, and we've got these best practices here. Perhaps this is where call tracking fits into the conversation. After all, we are here to discuss how call tracking can improve e-commerce. So talk to us about phone calls. Is this analog? Is this a bygone thought, or is call tracking actually a tool that we can have in our back pocket to compete in this new e-commerce landscape?
Oh, for sure. I mean, call tracking is I can't see it going anywhere. I think a lot of companies that started e-commerce websites figured, oh, everybody's going to transact online. It's going to be great. I'll never talk to a customer. They'll just put their credit card in and buy it, and life is great. Great in theory, but the reality is there's a certain consumer that wants to talk. Depending on if you're B2B, B2C, the reasons will be different. Depends on your product and how they interact with it and buy it. Depends on how your website looks sometimes and how people will call you more often or not. But companies that have call tracking have that extra lever and an extra leg up on competition because they can see that data. And so I love call tracking, not just because CallRail's sitting here next to me, but because it helps our clients do better.
Sure. And one other thing that you've mentioned to me, Ryan, when it comes to optimizing for sales, competing in this landscape, is not just following what you see your competitors doing, not just repeating monkey see, monkey do, seeing a campaign that they're running, copying that. Dig into that a little bit for us. What is meant by that, and where have you seen that be a pitfall for prospects and clients?
We have seen a lot of clients come to us and either say, well, my competitor's doing this or doing that, and we should do it. I can't ever say that that's a bad idea to at least test things, but a lot of our clients can make the mistake of seeing a competitor do it and think it's a good idea. Just because they happen to be bigger does not necessarily mean they're smarter or that they know what they're doing. And there could be different goals set up within that, whatever they're doing. And so if you know a competitor is tracking calls, it probably makes sense to test it. And I would say 99% of the time, it's something you should have been doing anyway and tracking that. But if you see an ad text or you see a landing page, you can never gauge what a competitor is doing as if it's valuable. You have to look through it through your own lens, and your business is going to be different. Your margins are probably going to be different. How you operate and what your internal goals are going to be different than any other company out there, which is why it's fun in my world. I just get to talk to new businesses and new business owners all day, every day, and I get to have different conversations, even if they're in the same industry. It's fascinating and a lot of fun for me. But at the end of the day, that call data is hugely valuable and allows for you to step on the gas in certain areas where you see it working that maybe you don't get the online revenue. And so if you didn't have call tracking, you would think that keyword is not a very good keyword because nobody bought anything online. But it turns out you had a lot of phone calls off of it, and they were really long, engaged phone calls. And if you've got the right system, you can actually see the revenue off of those phone calls and say, wow, those phone calls were hugely profitable. We want more of that. If a competitor doesn't have that, that's going to give you a big advantage and hopefully keep your costs on that keyword down because they don't have that data.
And we're going to look at some very specific ways that we've seen this play out, that Logical Position has seen this play out for its customers recently. We're going to look at some case studies, but before we do that, just a couple of housekeeping notes. One, we will be taking questions at the end of this webinar. There's a module for questions on the right-hand sidebar of the webinar. So if you have any, feel free to drop those in there and we'll try to get to them at the end of this. And secondly, this is being recorded, so you don't have to worry about furiously taking down notes, we will be sending out the recording of this following the end of the webinar. So let's look at a couple of those specific use cases, ways that call tracking has helped some logical position clients. First, we've got a company in the automotive space that we won't name. Ryan, talk to us about this case study.
This is honestly one of my favorite clients, and what I've been able to see them accomplish over the past year. Spend has increased. They've been willing to spend more money on Google and Bing and their online advertising, which is usually a good sign that something is going right. But beyond that, their coverage of their terms in the industry has gone up 21%. So they've been more efficient with that spend and covering valuable stuff. So they eliminated some waste, stepped up what they were doing on certain terms that were valuable to the company. We only saw online revenue track up 6%. So if you see that 6%, but you've increased spend 12%, on the surface that may not look ideal, and they may not think our company is very good at what we do. But we implemented call tracking with CallRail on this client, and we tracked leads. Tracked leads in this organization are up 500%.
Wow.
And they had some level of call tracking before, but not to the level that CallRail offers. And so we've been able to absolutely increase the offline revenue of this company a tremendous amount. They've had days where we've actually had to turn marketing off because they couldn't handle and fulfill all the sales they were getting, which is a great problem to have. One thing I really like about this client too is they have, in the partnership with Logical Position, actually changed the online landscape of this industry. We've actually had some of their competitors call us when they found out that they were working with us and tried to work with us because they have seen a change in the landscape and were honestly freaking out calling me. And we could not take them on. Like this company has so dominated their competitors that we knew we could not bring on another client and actually make them work. Most industries, I believe, based on the positioning in real estate on Google, can handle 2 or 3 dominant players that are fighting over market share. So we may have a couple teams in the same industry competing on similar terms, and they're both going to be profitable and both hitting company goals. But in this specific instance, the business owner's personality is so hyper aggressive, and then combined with a lot of my personality is aggressive as well, and so our team kind of adopts that. The first mover advantage he had in call tracking, combined with our abilities in e-commerce, jumped him out to such a large lead that conceptually nobody else can compete, and that they're so far behind. And so we've literally created a monopoly on Google that even another one of our highly talented teams couldn't overtake what he's already done. For me, that's just kind of fun that we were able to do that and actually take over an entire vertical on Google that somebody couldn't compete with.
Sure, and I'm sure now, understanding where these leads are coming from, that being up 500%, which is staggering, the revenue number ought to follow suit. I would imagine you've already seen a 6% lift, but now just with that information, based on what we've talked about previously, you would expect that to rise as well, correct?
Oh yeah, they are breaking every record monthly consistently. So it's a lot of offline revenue. So his internal sales team has broken almost every record for every month we've worked with them. So they've done phenomenally well, even though we don't see that number in analytics. We see traffic up, we see the actual calls coming into AdWords, so we can optimize off of those. And this actually comes on one of the worst web platforms available. His web platform is very old. His website's terrible for an online experience, but because people just call him off of this. Like if he ever moved we're advocating move to a mobile friendly, he doesn't have a mobile friendly site even, we'll get a lot of mobile phone calls specific on this client. And so if he ever moves to a mobile friendly platform that's responsive and actually has a clear cut conversion path, we'll probably see a lot of online revenue increase, but also that time on site and phone calls will most likely continue to increase as well.
Amazing, and it's worth noting here too, for those of you who have tuned in, the automotive space is a place that we're going to see a lot of phone calls, right? It's important when we're thinking about call tracking, we're looking at some of these incredible numbers that when you've got something related to your vehicle, there's a pretty good chance before you make a purchase, you're gonna want to pick up the phone, talk to a human being. And so as you as you view this webinar, as you listen to Ryan's best practices here, it's worth thinking through, am I in a space that is call dependent? Am I in a space like the automotive space, like the healthcare space, that receives, again, a high volume of these phone calls? Before we look at this next case study, Ryan, I would just remind viewers, we're already getting a couple of questions in here. If you have any questions that you have related to how call tracking can improve e-commerce, please feel free to drop those again on the sidebar. Okay, let's look at one other case study here. Vitality is the client. You've been working with them since August of last year. Tell us about what call tracking has done for Vitality.
Yeah, so Vitality is a medical supply company, primarily B2B, but they also will take B2C depending on the quantities that somebody needs for their own use. We've seen crazy things. You see some of their stats up there, but we've increased spend 13%, while at the same time that return on that ad spend is up 13%. They're not yet at the space where they're willing to even just break even. They're trying to get profit on the first order, so we're working on them just at least capturing as much profit share as they can. But bringing in call tracking, we've got conversions up 42%, and so in their space, that person on a business-to-business sale, the large ones many times want to call in and talk and make sure maybe they need a purchase order before they execute the sale. They can't just go put a credit card in and not get a purchase order first. That type of thing happens over the phone many times in B2B. And so if you are B2B, and that's important, start tracking calls. I mean, if you haven't done it yet, you're way behind. So track conversions are way up. That's phone calls and online transactions. But online transactions are even up 32%. And so that's us taking a lot of real estate on Google Shopping from their competitors and increasing that click-through rate on a lot of those text ads. Allows them to spend more. We're honestly barely scratching the surface on this client. I would expect by the time we get to August, September, these numbers will not only be better, but they'll be capturing a large portion of the market share, spending more for it, but they are doing phenomenally well. And these numbers will only get better as the year goes on. Excellent. Yeah, and another amazing look at a company that's a B2B company, healthcare. Again, calls are going to be heavy in a space like this. So something to keep your eye on as you evaluate how call tracking might play into your business. Yeah. And a note too, even if you don't think you're going to get a lot of phone calls, I highly recommend testing it because you probably will be surprised at how many phone calls you can get if you're doing it properly and driving the right traffic to category pages. That can open up new keywords maybe you haven't been able to run on before. I'm usually surprised about how many phone calls do come in on a site, even when you'll go out with a theory that there's not very many phone calls here. They're all going to be customer service calls. That's not what we're looking for. We want sales calls. And we go with call tracking. Even when we do a CallRail 2-week test, it's just it's eye-opening every time. It's like it surprises me. There's a lot of people that like phone calls. Exactly, yeah. And if you're not yet a CallRail user, it's worth noting we do have a 14-day free trial, no credit card required. If this is something that's piquing your interest, you want to understand where these leads are coming from. You want to understand how many phone calls you're getting. We have a 14-day free trial, as well as the ability to request a demo and have one of our experts show you around on the platform, so you can start to understand those things and dive into this hyper-competitive, data-driven space that we're seeing emerge. Okay, I think we got a couple of questions. Ryan, I'll have you jump in and take the first one. Yeah, let me get our question bubble thing up here to make sure we capture all of them. So first question here, this is a good one. Are there industries call tracking is not successful, specifically in e-commerce? If you don't have a phone number on your site, it's obviously not going to work. I'll start there. Like if you literally can't take phone calls, don't put call tracking on because there's no way to use it. I have yet to see where it's not useful. Even if you're only getting a few calls a month, being able to optimize off of those calls to help you get more data and then figure out if those calls generated sales. So I'll even start basically with a lot of clients just saying, okay, if you get 10 phone calls a month, how many sales do you actually average on a monthly basis? They'll say 2 or 3. Okay, great. So we know you get about a 20 to 30% conversion rate. If we can scale up those calls because we see certain keywords are driving those, or certain products on shopping are driving those phone calls, it's worth turning it up. And we may even ask them if offline phone call are actually more valuable. If those orders are bigger or worse, why not see if we can get more of those? Yeah, so regardless, if it's free for 14 days, why would you not try it? That's my theory on almost anything. Free is my favorite price, so I like it.
And then it looks like we got another question here. A viewer is wanting to understand, how does call tracking work if a visitor goes to a different page, perhaps to a non-property brand page? How would call tracking still provide value in a situation like that?
Go for it. That's you.
Yeah. So you can list tracking numbers on brand pages as well as off brand pages. You can even list it if you're a local business in your Google My Business page. And so when we're talking about tracking calls at a source level, you can understand by placing tracking numbers both on your website as well as on your social pages, Facebook, Yelp. We can have various tracking numbers that will help you to understand where these calls are coming from, whether your Yelp ad spend, Facebook ad spend, Google AdWords spend is working for you. And then another thing that I'll mention here is dynamic number insertion and what that is. This sounds like a big concept. It's really not. It's basically we can serve up on your web page a piece of code that will dynamically insert different numbers as users arrive on the page. We actually have another layer beyond this, a new feature called local swap that will serve up, as long as you've got the numbers in your number pool, serve up a number local to the visitor on your website based on the IP address that they've arrived on your page from. So if you have a number that fits that visitor's area code, you can serve up a number that will give them confidence that they've reached a local business, not just a mega call center. So pretty cool stuff. I think that does it for our questions. Anything to add?
Looks like there's one more that came in.
Okay.
It looks like, yeah, they picked up on this. I mentioned a bad platform online, and what are some of the good ones, specifically that automotive one. So I won't necessarily name names on bad platforms. We work with all of them, and some are better than others, and they're all trying to work to improve their platforms. But I would say if you're looking at platforms and trying to find a good one, find one that is responsive and works well on mobile. Over 50% of traffic coming from Google is mobile. And if you're not set up for it, you're going to have problems. And in fact, Google's actually sent some emails to clients of ours that in July, Google's going to start ranking sites mobile first. So if that platform is not mobile friendly, there's some tests you can do on Google to see if it is. If you just Google Google site test, it'll actually rank your site and tell you what some of the issues are on a mobile site. But I would do that, and then I also like to find one that handles PCI compliance for me. So all of my online brands, I want to know that I don't have to worry about that credit card storage and making sure that it's healthy. So yeah, I mean, I think we're pretty much out of time, aren't we? Or we got?
Yeah, I think we're just about out of time here. We did just see a couple more questions come in. We'll try to get you guys answers offline here, but for the sake of everyone's time, I think we are going to wrap up. Again, we have recorded this webinar here, CallRail with Logical Position, and we will be sending out a recording of it once we're done. Thank you so much for taking the time to learn about this. We're excited to help. And Ryan, I think there was something you wanted to mention, Logical Position, providing for the viewers.
If any of you, if any of these questions were confusing or you've been advertising online and you want to know how you're doing, or you have an agency or an internal team, reach out to me. We're actually going to have an email go out that'll have my contact info in there. And I love talking business and helping, so reach out to me. I'll audit an account for you. It doesn't cost you anything, just some of your time talking with me online and through the phone. So yeah, I hope you understand strategy, set a strategy, and if it makes sense that we can work together, I'd love to help you.
Thanks once again for tuning in. We wish you the best of luck in your e-commerce endeavors. Keep grabbing data, understanding how people are arriving on your platform, what they're interested in, and one important tool for understanding that is paying attention to those phone calls that are coming in. Thanks so much, guys.